And it's like a core memory gets unlocked for Nick. He'd kind of forgotten about that after these 2 years, and all of a sudden he realizes whatever the heck that thing was before that was not my dad, that's happening again right now.
So, once again, you have found yourself at the campsite of the Orator. Please pull up a chair. As you can see, my fire is stoked, which means I have another tale to tell. But before we begin, if you do find yourself enjoying this kind of content, first-hand accounts of the supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then make sure to like this video, but also subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell. You'll get notified every time I upload new content, and I can continue to do what I love, which is telling terrifying tales. Second, all of the stories that I feature on my channel are first-hand, true accounts of the supernatural and paranormal. So if you or anybody you know has a story that you would like to have featured on my channel one day, please either reach out in the comments below or in the description of this video. I'll have all of my social medias posted. You can reach out to me on any one of those. We'll find a time to get together. I can collect your story and tell it here on the channel one day. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get on to today's first story. It is a tale that I call The Others. So our story starts with Nick, who is 6 years old, his brother Jared, who's 4 years old, his mom, who is a stay-at-home mom, and he has a dad who works out of town, and so he leaves early Monday morning, and he's usually not home until late Friday night, so he's gone the entire week, and he stays with his parents while he's at work. And they live in a really nice house. It's got 3 different floors. The main floor, you walk in, the front entrance, and you're in kind of like a big corridor with a set of stairs that goes upstairs. But nobody usually entered the front door because their mom was an avid gardener, and the entire front of the house was a lush, beautiful garden she didn't want people walking through. But also, the front door was one of these heavy oak doors. It's really difficult to get open, and so people typically avoided that. Instead, they went to the back door. But if you were to enter that front door, you'd be in that corridor with the stairs that go upstairs. If you went beyond that corridor, you'd enter the living room, and then the dining room, and then the kitchen. And then at the kitchen, that's where that back door is that most people would enter. So typically, people would go around back, they'd enter through the kitchen door, take their shoes off there, and that was really the main entrance of the house for all intents and purposes. Now, their mom, like I said, loved to garden. There was a garden out front, but it was also on the sides of the house and in the back of the house. So she literally gardened all over the place. So our story actually starts on a Thursday. Nick is home, and it is spring break or Easter break, and he does not have school. And so he's chilling in the living room on the couch watching TV. His mom and Jared, his brother, are out back gardening when all of a sudden he hears the front door open and close, and he can distinctly hear his dad's shoes, his work shoes, which are hard-soled, and so they have kind of a distinct click. He hears them walking across the floor in that corridor, and then he hears his dad's work briefcase get set down, something he's heard a million times when his dad comes home. And so he's like, heck yeah, Dad's home a day early. This is awesome. So he jumps up from the couch. He goes to run into that corridor, but his dad is already halfway up the stairs. Now, alarm bells are already kind of sounding for a couple reasons. Number one, his dad was super meticulous about no shoes in the house. Shoes in the kitchen were okay, but they always came off in the kitchen, which was another reason they never entered into the front area, because he didn't want shoes on his carpet. So that was the first thing that was a little bit weird. The second thing that was a little bit weird was he's home a day early, which pretty much never happens. Sometimes he's home a day late, but he's never home a day early. So that was a little bit weird. But the weirdest thing was that their dad had a very specific ritual. When he came in, the first thing he did was he found both of his boys, and he would pick them up, give them a big hug, and throw them up into the air and catch them. And then he always, before he came home, went shopping at this little mart that had these specific chocolate milks that were like their special chocolate milks. So he'd get home, he'd grab them, he'd hug them, he'd throw them in the air, and then boom, they'd get their special chocolate milk. And it was like Dad's home ritual. It was just something they did literally every single time he came home. And so he is really worried. Nick is really worried because his dad is on the carpet with his shoes, hasn't greeted him. All sorts of weirdness going around in that situation, but it's his dad and he's home, and so whatever. So Nick runs upstairs and he's like, Dad, hey, what's going on? And his dad completely ignores him, keeps walking up the stairs. And Nick, he keeps pestering him, Dad, hey, what's going on? And with the persistency that only young people have, he just doggedly follows him up the stairs, tugging on his pants. Dad, hey, Dad, what's going on? What's going on? Hey, why aren't you listening to me? And his dad just completely ignores him. And Nick is kind of freaked out because his dad is stiff. He's moving with like almost robotic intentness. He doesn't even see him breathing. It's like something is really off. And obviously he's just completely ignoring him. He reaches that landing for the stairs. He walks over to his bedroom, opens the door, and slams it in Nick's face. And Nick, he's a pretty sensitive kid. And a lot of it has to do with his upbringing. His parents gave him and his brother a ton of attention, and he's just used to having that level of attention. And so to be completely ignored is really heartbreaking for him. So he runs downstairs, he runs through the house out to the backyard, and he's crying, and his mom's like, whoa, what's going on? And he explains, Dad came home, and he just completely ignored me, and I don't know what's going on. And his mom's like, baby, Dad's not home. He doesn't come home until tomorrow. And he's like, what are you talking about? I followed him up the stairs. He's home. He's in the bedroom right now. So his mom, gets up, follows him. They head upstairs. They open the bedroom door, and it's completely empty. There's nobody there. They look out. His car is not in the driveway. She's like, baby, I don't know what's going on, but your dad's clearly not here. Maybe you just need to take a nap. So she takes him to his room. She puts him down. He goes to bed. And basically, that was kind of the end of it. They sort of forgot about it until 2 years later. So it's 2 years later. Nick is now 8 and Jared is 6. And this time they're outside on the trampoline, which is in the backyard. And they're kind of bouncing on the trampoline, having fun. Now, at that time, their uncle lived with them. He had gone through kind of a rough situation. He needed a place to stay for a little bit. And so he's staying with them for the time being. And they're on the trampoline when all of a sudden they see their uncle's car pull into the driveway. And so right away they're excited because their uncle is just like their dad. Super excited guy, always greets them, really nice. Just one of those guys that they really like to hang out with. And so they jump off the trampoline, they run over to give him a hug, and just like 2 years earlier, he completely ignores them, kind of brushes them off and walks past them. And it's like a core memory gets unlocked for Nick. He had kind of forgotten about that after these 2 years. And all of a sudden he realizes, whatever the heck that thing was before that was not my dad, that's happening again right now. And so Jared, he makes sure that Jared is with his uncle. He says, stay with him. I'm going to go get Mom right now because something weird is going on. He runs to the other side of the house. His mom is gardening completely on the opposite side of the house, of course. So he runs to the opposite side of the house. Meanwhile, Jared and his uncle, they go in the back door like normal, and he's like, you know what, they'll be fine. He's not going to get hurt or anything. I'm going to get Mom. So he runs, he gets his mom. He's like, you remember when I talked about, my dad coming home and all this stuff? It's happening again with our uncle. He's home right now. And his mom's like, okay, sweetheart. So she goes in the back door, and Nick is looking in all the rooms as they kind of go through the house, and they're, both looking for their uncle, but they're also looking for Jared to see what's going on. They make it all the way to that front corridor, and there's Jared sitting on the stairs, bawling his eyes out. And his mom's like, hey, honey, what happened? And he's like, Uncle's gone. And she's like, what do you mean Uncle's gone? And then she turns, and she looks at Nick, and she's kind of mad at Nick. Like, what did you tell him? Because she's thinking Nick told him that their uncle was there, and now he's not, and so that's kind of what happened. And she's like, what do you mean? What's going on? And Nick explains, no, I told you. He pulled in. We saw his car. He came inside the house. We were on the trampoline. We saw him. We followed him. I went to get you, and we saw him together. And so then she turns to Jared, and she's like, okay, so what do you mean he's gone? And Jared finally, he kind of clears his tears from his eyes, and he explains, we went upstairs. I followed him. He wasn't listening. He went all the way up to his room on the 3rd floor, and then he slammed the door in my face, and he said, and then I opened the door to follow him, and he was gone. Uncle just wasn't there. And so now, Nick, he's at least thinking, at least I have some corroborative evidence. It wasn't just me that this happened to. Now this has also happened to my brother. Surely Mom is going to believe us now. But once again, his mom sort of dismissed it. Said, this is really weird of you two. And, I don't know exactly what's going on, but, like, maybe you guys both need a nap, And so she kind of dismissed the whole thing out of hand. And so Nick and Jared, they're kind of upset, and they're talking about it later, and they're kind of going over the details, when all of a sudden Jared points out to Nick that their uncle's car wasn't even the same color. He drove a red car. The car that pulled in was blue. It was the same make and model, but it was a different color. So right away, bells should have been going off because something weird was going on. And of course, after their uncle disappeared, they go out and look and the car is gone too. So the whole situation is just oddly, have no idea what is happening. And also, it's not like this is a spirit. They can feel it. They're grabbing their pant legs, they're pushing on them. There is substance to these things, and they just have no explanation for what's happening. So, another 4 years pass. Now, during these 4 years, they had somewhat similar incidents where people would walk into the house, walk upstairs, slam a door, and be gone. But it was always either Jared or Nick who saw this happen, and it was never their mom who saw it. But as the years went on and they got older, and it kept happening, she started to believe that maybe something weird was going on. And then one year, when Jared was 10 and Nick was 12, finally, she got to see this thing in action. So it is a Saturday morning, and they already knew that their dad was going to be home that morning instead of Friday night because their grandparents were coming to visit them. So he was going to basically ride up with them. So it's Saturday morning, they're kind of anticipating their dad and grandparents pulling in any moment when all of a sudden, grandparents' car pulls in. But it's just their grandparents' car, not their grandparents plus their dad. So right away, red flag number 1, just grandparents' car. Car pulls in, just grandma gets out. And so right away, Nick is thinking, okay, well maybe grandpa rode with dad, and for some reason they're just a little bit behind, and they'll be here in a little bit, right? Well, Nick, Jared, and mom are all out front to greet grandma. And normally grandma has gifts for the kids every single time they come to visit. They bring gifts. So red flag number 2, no gifts in their hand. But again, Nick's thinking, okay, maybe grandpa has them. So, Nick and Jared, they run out to greet grandma. They go to give her a hug, and she just brushes them away. Like, doesn't acknowledge them at all, as if they don't exist. Kind of knocks them to the side. And then their mom steps up, and she's kind of like worried. She can tell something weird is going on, but she also kind of wants to reprimand her mom because it's like, you just pushed my kids out of the way. Why aren't you going to acknowledge them? So she steps up to be like, hey, is everything okay? And grandma pushes her aside too. Just kind of shoulder bumps her. Doesn't even acknowledge her. Doesn't shove her. Just literally runs into her and knocks her to the side with like really weird strength. And so now their mom is like, this is weird. And Nick turns to Jared and he says, here we go, it's happening. And their mom turns to them and she's like, what do you mean it's happening? And as she's saying this, grandma just walks past her into the front door, and then they go chasing after her. And by the time they get inside, she's already headed upstairs. Now Nick, this has happened to him a number of times now, so he is fully prepared. He knows exactly what's coming next. So he rushes upstairs with his grandma, and she first goes to his door, his bedroom door. She opens it, goes inside, goes to slam the door, but he's like, I'm not letting this happen again. So he puts his arm in the door, and the door slams on his arm. And he remembers thinking, she slammed that thing so hard. She's so strong to be able to do this. This is not normal at all. This is not human level strength. And so his arm is in a lot of pain. She gets frustrated that she didn't slam the door. She leaves his bedroom, walks over to his bathroom. Same thing, opens the door. He stops it. She slams it on his arm. Again, really painful. Then she walks over to his parents' bedroom. Same exact thing. And then she goes to go back to his bedroom and try it again. And every single time he puts his arm in and is stopping it. And he's like, he doesn't know what's going to happen next. Then she goes to go up to the 3rd floor to do the same thing. But Nick's mom steps in front of her and is like, hey, cut this out. What are you doing? She's still thinking maybe grandma's having some kind of trouble. And then Nick steps behind grandma to block her from leaving. So now their grandma is stuck on this corridor, Can't go upstairs, can't go downstairs. Every single time she tries to go into a door, Nick stops her, and all of a sudden, it's clear that she's very upset, very distressed. And then she lets out this crazy shrieking wail, and she starts scratching at Nick's mom's face. And she gets a bunch of scratches in on her, and then she shoves her up against the wall and knocks her down. And then Nick runs up to do something to her, and the grandma turns around, grabs him, throws him against the wall, and the mom starts shouting, "Get out of here, call the cops, don't do this." But then grandma runs all the way downstairs, and they hear her run outside, and then by the time they get up and get over there, there's just nobody. There's no car in the driveway anymore. She's completely gone. They have no idea what's going on. But finally, Mom is starting to believe Nick and Jared that whatever's going on, it clearly is something supernatural. And then, of course, a few minutes later, Grandma and Grandpa arrive with their dad. Everything is totally normal with them. And so over the next few years, that exact same thing would always happen to them. Some random person that they knew would come into their house, obviously not really that person, and they would always follow them as they walked upstairs, found a room, opened a door, slammed it, and disappeared. But from now on, every single time they encounter something like this, they always make sure to keep their distance and let them walk into a room and slam a door. And so that's going to do it for today's tales. If you found that you loved these stories, these kinds of stories, supernatural, paranormal, things that go bump in the night, then please like this video, but subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell. That way you get notified every time I upload new content, but it also helps me to continue to do what I love, which is telling terrifying tales. Second, if you or anybody you know does have a supernatural story, supernatural or paranormal, anything in that vein, and you would like to be featured on the Orator channel, then please either comment below or reach out to me on my social media. We will get together. I will collect your story, and then one day, hopefully, we can feature you here on the Orator. So please, until next time, pull up a chair, my fire will be stoked, and I will have another tale to tell.